tonight on behalf of the African Christians United for Israel. We welcome you tonight on behalf of the Ebenezer Community Church. And we welcome you tonight on behalf of Christians United for Israel. This is a collaboration between these three entities. So on behalf of my wife, we want to say welcome, and we look forward to celebrating Israel and the Jewish people. We are here to declare that our solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people. Welcome, and we look forward to having a great time here tonight. Welcome. Shalom, shalom.
the first Israeli here on stage. I want to welcome all of you with Shalom. Shalom. And now we're going to give you a surprise. We're going to do something very special today for the Israeli anthem. I actually realized that we have a few Israelis coming to the event. We're not professional singers, so we're not going to be anything close to them. But I thought it would be nice for all of us together to ask the Israelis to actually come on stage, because we're going to sing the Israeli anthem, okay? As I said, my name is Ilan Sharon, and I'm a member of the local Jewish community. I'm also the host, Dr. Tabla and his wife Christine. They've asked me again to be the Jewish liaison of tonight's event to make sure that it is respectful to the Jewish guests as well.
In November of 2012, I was blessed to be among a few African pastors that Pastor Mike Hammond and Lynn Hammond, along with Pastor Tim Berg and others, took to Israel. Apparently, the Lord impressed upon Pastor Hammond's heart to take some African pastors to Israel, and I was privileged to be one of those. And while in the Holy Land, I had a special encounter with the Lord. And to cut long story short, at the Holocaust Museum, I was deeply overwhelmed by the evidence of the Holocaust. I got back on the tour bus and began to ask the question, where was the church? Where was the civilized world when this happened? And just kept asking this question. And then the Lord said to me, so what are you going to do about this information? And I said, well, Lord, you tell me what to do. He says, go back to the United States and do everything you can to bring African pastors and church leaders to Israel to experience what you have experienced so that they too can stand in solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people. And so I came to the United States, went back to Israel to learn the system as to how to lead tours. And by the grace of God, we led our first all-African tour to Israel in January of 2015. And this year, January, we also took about 23 pastors to Israel. Some of them, this is Prophet Caleb Aski from Liberia, and he has something very briefly to say.
Shalom Jerusalem and Shalom Israel. We are all celebrating Israel's greatness, but it will interest you to know that my country, the most powerful country in Africa, seriously, 1948, the Israelis had begun returning from Eastern Europe. And it was decided that they wouldn't go back to Jerusalem. But as Israel's nature is, they forced their way, conquer, and that will always be Israel's position. Conquer the Palestine and took over. They had to go to the United Nations to decide whether the land would be Israel's territory. And so the vote was tied. And my late president, William McKenna Shadrach Todman, sent the foreign minister, Gabriel L. Dennis, to go and give Israel the vote. It was Liberia's vote that made Israel to win the land. Liberia, stand up for Jerusalem. Liberia, stand up for Jerusalem. Bless you.
Church, what do you do now? Briefly.
5 years ago, 126, Psalm 122, verse 6, they that love thee shall prosper. So I just had the leading coming from one of those regular meetings. And then we gather pastor to celebrate Israel's birthday every year. And it interests you to know also that we follow the day-to-day activities. When Hezbollah is attacking Israel, we are fasting. When Hamas is sending rocket, we are fasting. Israel will not be destroyed.
The reason I wanted Pastor ask you to share, this is just one example of many pastors all over Africa that love Israel, but they are not heard of. They spend time fasting for Israel. They spend time praying for the peace of Jerusalem. In fact, he tells me even his son wants to go to military school in Israel. That's how serious this is. So we want our Jewish brothers and sisters to know that you are not alone. Africa stands with Israel. Pastor Cole.
Praise the Lord. It's time to celebrate. Amen. Tonight, Greater Praise and Christ Triumphant Outreach Ministries, we are joined together to present to you a dance, clap, and shout. Put your hands together.
Dumasani Washington is a pastor, composer, author, and music teacher in Northern California. Dumasani's first book, Zionism and the Black Church, Why Standing with Israel Will Be a Defining Issue for Christians of Color in the 21st Century, was released in September of 2014. Dumasani's production company, June 25th Music, first album, The Hebrew Project, Volume 1, From Beyond the Rivers, is a musical, cultural stand with the nation of Israel. Dumasani is a graduate of the San Francisco Conservatory of Music and director of the Zion Academy of Music in Stockton, California. Dumasani is senior pastor of the Congregation of Zion in Stockton. He and his wife Valerie have been married for 26 years. And they have 6 beautiful children. And tonight is just a privilege to have him come and be our keynote speaker on this 3rd African night to celebrate Israel, honor Israel in the state of Minnesota. Would you kindly give a rousing applause as we welcome Dr. Dumasani Washington.
I am the National Diversity Outreach Coordinator for Christians United for Israel, a post that I greatly appreciate. Dr. John Hagee, God gave him a vision that he had started 10 years ago with about 400 pastors. Christians United for Israel is now the largest pro-Israel organization in the country, possibly in the world, at over 2.9 million members, and it grows exponentially. Not only is it the largest pro-Israel organization in the country, and quite possibly in the world, it is the most diverse. I have the opportunity as the National Diversity Outreach Coordinator to serve on a team with Dr. Tabla, who is our African Outreach Coordinator. One of the things we talked about, the official letter that is coming, Dr. Tabla working on that. What you've done here in this region, Minnesota, I want you to know, has been reverberating around this country and other parts of the world. They have been watching African Christians standing with Israel and the Jewish people here. And you have been inspiring people all over the country. I can tell you that for certain. And what we've been able to do as Dr. Tabla came on, as he continues to pastor, as do I in Northern California, he now travels the country, and sometimes I get to go with him, talking to other African pastors and other Christians across the country, and listing their role as well in Christians United for Israel to stand wholeheartedly and solidly with Israel and the Jewish people. To say that we are, as he said earlier today, you are not alone, we stand with you. And on that team also is Reverend Charles Wong, who is our Asian Outreach Coordinator, Pastors Peter and Mildred DeJesus, who are our Hispanic Outreach Coordinators, and now Chief Ann Richardson, who's actually from the Rappahannock tribe, the tribe of Pocahontas. Actually, she's a descendant. She's our Native American Outreach Coordinator, because the church is multi-ethnic, and so we are reaching out throughout the church, and we are finding that there are Christians of every nation, tribe, kindred, and tongue who love Israel, who love the Jewish people, and who want to stand silently behind. We are honored to be able to do that. One of the things that we have been emphasizing, if you will, is the importance of the role. Again, I shared with you already that I have the honor of serving as the Diversity Outreach Coordinator, and there are other coordinators with me of different ethnic backgrounds. But if I could for a moment today, in the few moments that we have, emphasize for my African brothers and sisters here in the room the particular role that the continent of Africa is playing when it comes to Israel's solidarity and advocacy. Some of you may or may not be aware of the fact, just a few weeks ago in the state of Israel, there was a Knesset caucus, the Parliament caucus, that the Prime Minister himself hosted along with the other Parliament members, called the Knesset Caucus on Israel-Africa Relations. In that caucus, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and let me state this here, CUFI does not in any way speak for the government of Israel or campaign or lobby the government. We simply stand with Israel and the Jewish people. It makes no difference to us who is in power, who the prime minister is, which power. That is not our issue. Our issue is not to affect Israeli politics. Our Israel is to stand solidly with Israel and the Jewish people, as it defends its right to exist and continues to do great things all across the world. Prime Minister Netanyahu stood before those African heads of state, and among the things that he had addressed was the current state of the African Union. Israel, around the early 2000s, was voted off of that seat as being a regional power that would sit and confer about what would happen in the region. And it was voted off because of politics. And since then, I believe it was around 2002, since that time, and can I just talk to you for a moment? I feel comfortable. So since that time, what has happened, among other things, unfortunately, is Israel's political opponents, particularly from the Palestinian Authority, has used its time on the council to demonize, vilify, and completely delegitimize the Jewish state. The Jewish state that has had close relationships with African countries since its independence in 1948. Israel gained its independence from the colonial power of Great Britain in 1948, and not 10 years later, Ghana was the next African nation to gain its independence from the same colonial power, and the two have been close friends ever since, as with Kenya, as with Liberia, and on and on. As a matter of fact, by the mid-1970s, when the dreaded UN resolution, Zionism was racism, was passed, to despite Israel and the Jewish people, because it had the audacity to win the Yom Kippur War, which we can't do a lot of history today, but I'll just give you a little quick thing. When it was passed in the mid-1970s, and at that time, Israel had more embassies throughout the African continent than any other nation other than the United States. Not colonial setups, embassies. Cooperative efforts that were everything from education to medicine to science to technology. This has been the mantra of Israel and the Jewish people since its independence. As a matter of fact, those of you who are aware of the fact that Theodor Herzl, one of the founding fathers of modern Zionism, had stated unequivocally that once he said, quote, "I have seen the redemption of my people, I want to assist in the redemption of the African. I want to be a partner in working with a people," he said, "that have been as dispossessed as my people have been." And then that was made true that as Israel is now emerging again, it's reconstituted. There's always been a presence of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, but its independence after that, Golda Meir, one of its first foreign ministers, became known to some of the African leaders. They called her lovingly the mother of Africa. Why? Because there were so many projects that Israel launched throughout the continent of Africa that venerated the relationship, not in a patriarchal sense, but as we work with you, we stand with you. Amen. So that when Israel's enemies would target Israel to vilify it, the first thing that it would do is attack its relationship with Africa. It's not happenstance that Zionism is racism was passed in 1975, about 2 years after the Yom Kippur War, in response to Israel winning the Yom Kippur War. And Israel's enemies said after a while, you know what, as I say to a lecture circuit as I'm talking to the students on college campuses, because Israel's enemies lost the 48 war, the 56 war, and the 67 war, all the Christians in the house say amen. Because the word of God says that he that keepeth Israel, don't make me preach up in here. So what happened was, Israel's enemy says, you know what? We just can't beat these Jews. We keep trying and trying. They're outnumbered, they're outgunned, but somehow they said, you know what we know we'll do? We'll delegitimize their existence. So they worked together with the former Soviet Union and crafted the resolution, Zionism is racism. It was a double swipe. It was delegitimizing Israel, and it was an attack on Israel's relationship with Africa. We talked about it earlier today, this morning, in church, that 40 being the number of testing, the number of trial. And we just came up on 40-year anniversary of two main things. Number one, 2015 was the 40-year anniversary of Zionism is racism. It was rescinded in 1991, but the damage was so done, it's still reverberating on our college campuses today. I had the opportunity to travel the country along with my colleagues at CUFI on campus, and that despicable resolution still resonates today. It was delegitimate, it was illegitimate when it was passed, even though it's been rescinded. It's still, to this day, Israel on many of our college campuses. How many of you in here are college students? Pastors, parents, grandparents. You may or may not be aware, but ground zero ideologically continues to be our college campuses. Our students are being targeted with anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel propaganda, and they are being targeted, particularly being black students. Anti-Israel groups set up on campuses, and the first thing that they do to show themselves to be legitimate is they reach out to the African and the African American students. Because they know if they stand with them, they have legitimacy. So let me tell you my point here today. I had the opportunity to talk to a black church in Southern California, and we just preached for a while from the text of Jeremiah chapter 29, the one where I know of the plans I have for you, saith the Lord, plans to prosper you and to do you good, to bring you to an expected end. We talked about that. We don't have time to do that whole thing today, but what I had the opportunity to do is talk to the students and the parents in the church from the subject, do you know who you are? So we had the opportunity, my colleague David Walker and I, he's the National Campus Director for CUFI on campus, to take Israel, CUFI's first ever African and African American group to Israel just last month in March. 35 African and African American college students from colleges all over the country, including historically black colleges like Clark and also in Howard and several others, as well as just other regular colleges from all over the country, from the best and the brightest. It was a tremendous trip. I wish I could tell you all about it right now. I can't, but it was amazing. Everybody say amazing. It was absolutely amazing. But one story I have to share with you very briefly is that we had purposely scripted this trip particularly for children and students of African descent. There were things about Israel that we wanted them to see because we knew how Israel was being attacked on their campuses. And one of those events that we scheduled was with that Sudanese refugee by the name of Adam Bashar. Some of you may have heard of this gentleman before. He's been featured in a couple of documentaries. He fled Sudan during the very tumultuous time that continues even right now. And after a while, he was in Egypt for a while, but he eventually made it to Israel and to freedom. He got his high school diploma and his college degree in Israel because there were scholarships that were set aside just for African refugees, something that the media will not tell you. And he's a thriving businessman with his own money exchange business today. And so we had him come and talk to the students because one of the things that's happening is Israel, that whole Israel-Africa Alliance thing, is being attacked for how it's treating African refugees. The whole issue of asylum seekers, refugees, and what are sometimes called infiltrators is a very, very complex story. We don't have time to get into the whole thing today, but what I can tell you right now that it is a lie that Israel is attacking African people. It's a lie. It's a bald-faced lie. So we had Adam come and speak, and he talked, and what he talked about was his flight from Sudan, his time in Israel, but in his talking, very, very mild-mannered, powerful man, but just not like me, I'm all loud like my mom, and she, God rest her soul, but he's very, very quiet, and he stood there, and when he got to the part of 2 to 3 million Sudanese who've been killed since the late 1990s, Omar Bashir, who's the president, the Darfur region, all of these horrible things that are going on, our students, as learned as they were, had never heard it before. They'd heard Israel delegitimized, but they never heard the whole story. And as he spoke, our students became emotional. Some began to get up, began to cry. They were hearing this, and my heart was going out to them because we have children their age, so I'm feeling in the room like a father. And finally, when it was time for question, it wasn't really time for question and answers, but they couldn't take it anymore. And he looked at me and said, oh no, let them ask. They got the gist. They want to ask some questions. And they began to ask questions, but as astute as the questions were, it belied the fact that they were more powerful than they realized. They said things like, who's responsible for this? What do we, how do we protest? Who do we see? And Adam looked at them, and he said to to them, you're African Americans. He said, you are the most powerful Africans in the world. You have the ears of congressmen, senators, Africans in the most powerful. They looked at him, and after a while he began to talk about the United Nations, how it is unconcerned about Africans being slaughtered by Islamist terror, but spends almost all of its time, he didn't say this part, he was too diplomatically correct, I was the one who was incorrect, I still would let them know, because the United Nations Human Rights Council spends the majority of its time passing resolution after resolution after resolution against Israel, size of New Jersey, 8 million people. That's doing all it can to heal the world. While the slaughtering that's going on in Nigeria, in Sudan, when Al-Shabaab in Kenya, I know, I'm going to pick it up on a nice note, but stay with me for the whole thing. While that's going on, nobody cares. And they don't know because the United Nations is so anti-Semitic and so anti-Israel that it spends all its time and our tax dollars delegitimizing the only viable democracy in the entire region. Any Christians in the house say amen? Yeah. Do you know that there's a Christian genocide going on right now in the Middle East? And the one place that's safe for Christians in the entire region is the Jewish state of Israel. I have Israeli friends who call me. They say, Dumisani, why don't more Christian pastors in the United States say more about what's happening to your Christian brothers and sisters? I have no answer for them. They said, Dumisani, we're not even Christians. And we're making more noise about what's going on in Syria and in Iraq and in Libya. Where are the Christians? So when the young people were asking this question, and Adam began to tell them about the United Nations, that's where I took it from him. I said, Adam, I looked at them and I let them know that you have the ability. Before I did, he said to them, you are children of African descent in America. He says, he told them, you have the power to help free my country. And he said, not just my country, other countries. He was wondering, why don't they know who they are? Why don't they know that they're less than 12% of the population of the United States, but the world is waiting for them to raise their righteous voice? He was an African who fled Sudan, now thriving in Israel, and he was thinking there's going to be a confirm. And it wasn't ever some sort of looking down on. It was never a situation where he was somehow disrespectful or any type of way. It was a very gentle soul. But he very gently encouraged them to let them know, you have the power to change this. Can I say this to you before I take my seat? One of the reasons why this African Night to Honor Israel is so crucial, my Minnesota brothers and sisters, is because you and I have the power to shift Israel-Africa relations in such a positive way and affect what's going on these college campuses in such a powerful way. And if nothing else gives you the impetus other than the Word of God said, praying for the peace of Jerusalem, recognize that as Israel is being delegitimized and as the United Nations is not paying attention, nobody is paying a higher price than Africans. Nobody is paying a higher price than Nigerians who are being slaughtered by Boko Haram. Nobody's paying a higher price than what's been happening. Remember when ISIS took the Ethiopian Coptic Christians and they took, I know this is not a very happy story, and they killed them in front of everyone? They were making a statement to the rest of the world saying, you don't care about Christians and we're going to expose your hypocrisy. Nobody has the power to shift that conversation like the people of African descent. Let me say to you before I make my close here, it's not just you waving a flag tonight. It's you taking an unequivocal stand and letting the world know we stand with Israel and the Jewish people. We appreciate Israel protecting Christians in the Middle East. We appreciate the relationship between Israel and Africa. And on our watch, that relationship will grow. It will thrive. It will expand. Our children will see Israel and Africa walking hand in hand like never before since Israel's independence, and we give God glory and honor and praise for it.
have here with me another Israeli. Would you please say hi to Eden Kohali? Would you please put your hands together? But Eden is actually the Israeli emissary to St. Paul. So she's actually the official, the highest ranked official Israeli here, I guess, in the St. Paul. Which is in charge on Minneapolis, actually, is the one that sits in Chicago, in the Midwest. In his first visit to Minneapolis, to the Twin Cities, he found out that there are Africans pastors that support Israel. And he said he wanted to meet with them because he actually was in Kenya. Before he came here, he was actually in Africa. You see, that's actually have the actual of Israel. It's come from the consulate and it's signed by him. And we want to read it for you. So the letter is dated April 10th, 2016. It's saying, Dear Dr. Tavla, I regret that I cannot join you at the 2016 African Night to Honor Israel on Sunday, April 10th, to speak to you in person. I commend the Ibn Ezer Community Church in collaboration with Africans Christians United for Israel and Christians United for Israel for hosting this event and for all the work that they do for Israel throughout Minnesota and the Midwest region. Also, Mr. Steve Hanitz, Rabbi Avraham Tatke, Pastor Dumisani Washington, Pastor Tim Bird, myself, Ilan Sharon, Joanne Magnuson, and Deb Campbell for all your hard work in helping organize this event.
Hello. I described that you host the first ever Africa Night to honor Israel in the US 2 years ago, and another one last year. I heard that the event was magnificent. I am so proud that the African pastors in Minnesota are leading this great new movement. You may not know that this event is close to my heart, as I had been posted to Africa as second security to the Israel Embassy in Kenya. I have also learned that the Africa pastor in Minnesota just returned from their second organized Africa pastor tour to Israel. I'm so excited that they are planning one more pastor tour to Israel. Finally, I ask you to have faith in the Israel people, faith that they will protect and preserve the treasure that is Israel, the Holy Land. The government and the people of Israel, with support and friendship of the government and the people of our greatest ally, the United States, will continue to pursue peace with security with our neighbors.
Okay, strong, the unshakable conviction that Israel, the homeland of the Jewish people, will continue to thrive as a light unto the nations and a beacon of hope in the Middle East.
God bless Israel. God bless the United States of America. And God bless you all. Bivracha, with blessing. Signed, Roy Gilad, Consul General. I just want to say thank you, really, from the deep of my heart. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to see you, and I just want to say thank you.
How many people here are familiar with Genesis 12:3? Can I see hands? What does it say? If you bless Israel, you will be blessed. There are two organizations in town that work very closely with Israel. It's the Minneapolis Jewish Federation and the St. Paul Jewish Federation. And they have ongoing programs in Israel, and they have staff that check and monitor these programs, that these are actually good programs with Israel. Also, in addition to do that, if we here today are going to give to the same programs in Israel, we're going to send a message to the Jewish community that we're together. We're united in supporting Israel, and there's no hidden agenda. Okay, it's causes that we believe in. So just to tell you a few things about the programs, example of two programs are One is called Eshel in Hebrew, and the other one is called La'ad Project. They support Holocaust survivors in Israel. I don't know if you know, but there's still 256,000 Holocaust survivors living in Israel. Some of them, unfortunately, actually a big percentage, a high percentage of them in poverty. And the federations here are helping them. And most of them need physical, emotional, and social support, because especially of what they've been through. The exact number of Holocaust survivors that are in Israel that live at or below the poverty level line are 60,000. Also in Israel, we have something we call Aliyah. How many people here know the name Aliyah, the word Aliyah? Can I see hands? Good. What does it mean, really? Ascend. Many people say it's immigrate to Israel. Actually, the Hebrew word means ascend because you're ascending to Jerusalem. When you go to Israel and Jerusalem, you're ascending to Jerusalem. So the word for a Jewish person that immigrate to Israel is called Aliyah, ascending. So the federations here are also supporting new immigrants, people, Jewish people that are ascending to Israel, including from places like Africa and the former Soviet Union. They support population that lives under the threat of rocket attacks. Also, as you know, every few years, unfortunately, in Israel, we're getting into a war situation, either with Hamas in the south or Hezbollah in the north. So your blessings will be very much appreciated.
And what does God say in Genesis 12:3? He says, I will bless them that bless you. I will curse those who curse you. My brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, if we had time, I would let you listen to the pastors who have been to Israel on our trips, took seed to bless the land, to bless the people of Israel. All of the pastors that have gone to Israel, some of them are business people. They have testified that upon their return, they have seen the Lord blessing their ministries, blessing their business at different levels. God will not back off from His word. He will stand behind His word. And pastors have reported to me that the Lord has begun to bless the ministries, the churches are growing. In fact, the latest testimony I heard was last Monday as we met for our last planning meeting for this event. One of the ministers that went with us, who is also a businesswoman, said, Pastor Tabla, we are seeing increase in our business. Increase. God says if you bless Israel, I will bless you. I give you a brief testimony, and then we are getting ready to lift our offering. By the grace of God, I hope we can raise 7,000 or above. For about 11 years, our church tried to get a loan to build. And things were not working out for us. Things were not just working out. But in 2012, as I mentioned to you, we were taken to Israel. Brother Ike is here now. Thank God he's here. We went to Israel, and when I was going to Israel, the church sent a seed. Not a lot of money, just $700. Says, take this to Israel, and whatever you are led to give it. We gave that seed, and I'm telling you, when I came back, it was like the Lord opened the portals of glory over our church, and the finances came in. Went back to Israel 3 times, and all 3 times I have taken seeds for our church to the Temple Institute. The Temple Institute is the group of people that are rebuilding all of the utensils that will be used in the temple when it's rebuilt. The priestly garments are being prepared, the shovels, the basins, everything other than the ark, because God is going to show them the ark when that time reaches. But we've been sowing into Israel, and by the grace of God, we finally paid off our land, and we needed a construction loan. We were on the verge of getting the construction loan, and then everything came to a standstill because there was a low portion of land that had a little problem. There was a little confusion as to who really owns that portion of land. And eventually, when they checked the records, it was for the neighbors across the street. And the bank would not give us the loan until that issue was resolved. As a matter of fact, they told me, Dr. Tabla, have we started the construction? and that issue came up, we will break down the building and resolve it legally before continuing. Almost 2 months passed by and nothing was happening. I asked the bank for the names of the neighbors. The bank said, we cannot give you the names of the neighbors. We don't want things to escalate. Every time I went to the Lord to pray, he says, ask for the names of the neighbors. When I go to the bank says, no. Anyway, off the record, we eventually got the names of the neighbors. And when I received the names looked Jewish. So I called Ilan. I said, Ilan, this name looks like people who have been to our African night to Israel. Check him out. He says, yes, Dr. Tabla, the name sounds Jewish, but I don't know these people, but I know somebody who knows them. He says, Pastor Tim knows these people. Let me call Pastor Tim. He calls Pastor Tim. Pastor Tim said, these people are in our praise and worship team, and they help with the children's church. I said, Pastor Tim, our construction cannot occur until this issue is resolved. This is what the bank has said. They want to bring the lawyers in, they want to go to court, and all of these things are happening. Pastor Tim calls this couple. He says, if you only knew who Dr. Tabla is, if you only knew Ebenezer Community Church, these people love Israel. Dr. Tabla has taken pastors to Israel, and he just kept talking about that. And then the neighbor said, tell him to come and visit us. I went to the neighbor's house, my brothers and sisters. They said, Pastor, as soon as we heard that you stand with Israel, everything has changed. They said, this land, we are going to sow this land as a seed. They gave us the land. We didn't have to pay for it. They gave us the land. They said, we are believing God for some property. We're going to sow this as a seed because you stand with Israel and the Jewish people. My brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, 8 days from now, our bill will be completed. $2.8 million. 14,000 square feet. But God said, if you bless Israel, I will bless you. So we blessed Israel. The Lord has blessed us. The past 3-4 years, there has been a difference at Ebenezer Community Church because we have agreed that we stand with Israel. We have put Israel in our budget, our annual budget. Israel is there. So, the next African Nights to honor Israel, you will be in a building that God has built.
Are you ready to celebrate? Are you ready to celebrate? All right. Lord, you are so good. Do you know that He's a good God? Do I have a witness there? Do I have a witness out there? Lord, you are so good. Lord, you are God. Lord, you excellent and
Next speaker, Rudy Bartlett is a Jewish American politician, a former U.S. Senator from Minnesota. A former United States ambassador to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. Bartlett was born in Berlin, Germany, When he was 3, his family fled Nazi Germany and settled in New Rochelle, and also served in the United States Army Signal Corps, 1954-1955. He also was founder and chairman of a plywood firm. In November 1978, he was elected as a Republican to the United States Senate. Bosworth played a major role in negotiating with the Ethiopian government to allow 14,310 Ethiopian Jews to be safely airlifted to Asia. This happened in less than a day and a half in what became known as Operation Solomon. Amen. In June of 1991, President George H.W. Bush awarded him the Citizen Medal for his exemplary deed of service to our nation. In 2005, President George Bush named Bosworth as the United States Ambassador to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. Bosworth now lives in Minneapolis and serves on the board of directors of the Jewish Institute of National Security Affairs. He is an AIPAC board member and a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. Please join me as we welcome Senator and Ambassador Rudy Bosworth.
Hallelujah. Only twice in history have blacks been taken in large numbers from the African continent for love and a better life. It happened once in 1985, Operation Moses, when President George H.W. Bush negotiated an agreement with the Ethiopians to bring 5,000 black Jews to Israel. And then the second time, only twice in history, have blacks been taken off the African continent for love and a better life. The second time was 1991, Operation Solomon, in which I was the negotiator. And 14,000 black Jews came to Israel. And I say to Pastor Washington, that was a wonderful keynote address, Pastor. It was just wonderful, and you were absolutely right about the United Nations. And I say to Pastor Tabla that it is an inspiration to go to Jerusalem, and one of my next trips has to be to Liberia. I've never been there. So it was 25 years ago this spring, just about now, that President George Herbert Walker Bush, the father of W, called me and said, Rudy, he didn't call me Senator, I called him Mr. President. He called me Rudy, and that's okay. He said, Rudy, I want you to be the emissary and go to Ethiopia and free those Jews, free those black Jews. And so I, of course, was very familiar with it. We had a black Jewish caucus of 45 senators in the United States Senate, black Jewish, Ethiopian Jewish caucus. I was the chairman, so I knew all about it. And I said to the president, there's a civil war going on over there in Ethiopia. And the president said, I know that, but you're going to have to go over there and free those Jews. So off I went. You know, when the Americans discovered, now 67, now it would be almost 100 years ago, when they discovered the black Jews of Ethiopia up in the mountains of Gondor province, which is a long way up into Ethiopia. The black Jews of Ethiopia were stunned. Boy, were they surprised. There were white Jews. They just didn't expect that at all. And the white Jews who discovered them didn't expect to meet black Jews. But they were there, and they had been there for 2,500 years, and they were still performing many of the Jewish rituals that we in the United States perform today. So I went over to Ethiopia, and we negotiated, and we negotiated. And finally, an airlift was okayed. And finally, swooped in the Israelis with their planes, and within 24 hours, 14,000 black Jews came to the state of Israel. It was absolutely terrific. And I was called by the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Shamir, and he said, "Come over and see what you've done." And I said, "Well, you had a little hand in it as well as our president." And it was a major league mitzvah. In Yiddish and Hebrew, Jews are supposed to do mitzvahs, good deeds. And the Prime Minister said to me, that was a major league mitzvah, bringing the black Jews to the state of Israel. And the people, of Israel, I can't tell you how excited they were to have their black brethren come to Israel. Amen. Amen is correct. Hallelujah. So only twice in history, only 2 times in history, have black people been taken in large numbers off of the continent of Africa for love and for a better life. And in both cases, it was the state of Israel bringing in gathering the Jewish people of Africa. And it was a wonderful mitzvah, and it was a wonderful thing to see them there, and they have been doing well. Amen. So, hallelujah. Amen. And thank you very much.
One other thing that happened here since this whole relationship between the local African community and the Jewish community started, it generated so many wonderful things. I can't imagine about any other city in the world or in the US that actually this kind of relationship has started. The next person that we really hope that he will be here, but he couldn't, and he's going to explain why, is Mr. Steve Hanitz. He's the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council.
For a couple of minutes tonight. I love this night, Africa Night for Israel. I've loved participating in 2014 and 2015, and I'm so sorry I can't be with you tonight. There are only 2 things that would keep me from attending tonight. First, this is the weekend of my daughter Dinah's bat mitzvah, and secondly, it is also the day that we celebrate my dad's 85th birthday. The whole world over, those are the only 2 reasons I can imagine not participating in the 2016 African Night for Israel. Great thanks to Reverend Tabla, Reverend Washington, Pastor Burt, Deb Campbell, Alon Sharon, Rabbi Atedki, and everybody here tonight. So many people make this magnificent night of color, pageantry, prayer, and love possible. Consider this. Out of Africa, humanity arose. Consider this. Out of Mount Sinai, the crossroads of Africa and the Middle East, the Jewish people gave to the world the Bible. We are neighbors and friends in history. We should always remember this as we go forth in life. Keep this in mind too. In 1847, Liberia earned its independence. In 1948, a little more than a century later, Israel earned its independence. Again, we are neighbors and friends in history. We go forward with so much in common. A love of God, love of Judaism, a love of Christianity, a love of the shared intertwined faiths of Jews and Christians throughout the world. It was not long ago when both of us were persecuted peoples, and to this day, we continue to face some obstacles. We recall that the Jewish people spent 430 years in slavery in Egypt. Africans were brought to the United States in slavery from 1619 to the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. Our peoples have embarked on their long journeys to freedom. We live together in freedom in this great country. Thank you for everyone responsible for this wonderful and glorious day.
We do have a planning committee, and I want to invite all of them to come up here.
The steps of a good man and a good woman are ordered of the Lord. This is an amazing holy convocation that I believe we all will be viewing one day on the other side. Amen? And on top of that, we are representing an amazing, rich tapestry, and every single one of us is a thread that he is weaving together. Both Christians and Jews, all of our pastors and their churches represented, and I just want to say a really big thank you. If King Hezekiah was one man who prayed against Sennacherib, who was going to annihilate Israel, and Isaiah showed up and said, hey, don't worry about it. 185,000 Syrians were slaughtered that night. What about us? We're all praying together. The God of Israel does not sleep or slumber. He's on it.
Shalom, shalom. It's so good to see all of you here. Greetings to the Boschwitzes, faithful friends of many years, and looking around, it's just a thrill to see what little things that I've had my finger on in the past have turned into. I'm the curator of the Jewish Christian Library, which is a significant library center at Living Word Christian Center in the Maranatha School wing of the building, and you're all welcome to come and visit. People tell me that libraries are a thing of the past, but I don't believe that. I think that people will be reading books long after I'm gone, and we've got a whole bunch of them waiting for you. So and it's such a thrill to see all of these people gathered together. When I first heard about the idea, I had no idea there were this many African churches, people actually from Africa, who were starting churches in the Twin Cities, until I started teaching classes out at Living Word, and I met Ike Agrocho, who's sitting over here. And Ike and I got together for coffee one day and spent about 3 hours talking and praying. And he introduced me to some of the other African pastors and churches, and one thing led to another. The first meeting like this we had, I think we had more speakers up front than we had people in the audience, but that's not that way anymore. To look and see what God has done. May he be praised forever and ever.
Thank you, Joanne. She's wonderful. She is. And if you don't know her, you have to get to know her and come to her classes. God bless you, Joanne. To try to educate yourself. First, if you have a church, feel free to contact any one of us here. You know, as the same people that I mentioned, we'll come and we'll do it for a great price. We're doing it for free. Okay? Just come to your church and hold the Israel-related events, education-related one. Almost no investment at all. We'll come and we will do it. Myself, I work with an organization called Minnesotans Against Terrorism, where we produce some films about Israel, that if you don't have the time of day and you just want to watch a film, actually we have a table with DVDs. You can purchase them today at a discounted rate. Or if you're a member at Netflix, actually you can get to see some of them for free. You don't even have to purchase them. The only thing I'm telling people, if you do buy a DVD, I see that as a commitment that you will watch it and learn more about Israel. There are a few films there, but two are very popular. One is called Israel Inside. The other one called Beneath the Helmet, which is like, it goes into the Israeli military and it follows 5 soldiers to learn about them and see who are these Israeli soldiers. One of them was a new immigrant from Ethiopia to Israel, from Africa to Israel. So you also get to hear his story, and actually his story in that film is really touching.
In hindsight, we see history more clear than when history is in the making. In 2006, when John Hagee and his wife Diana asked 400 pastors from around the country to come out to San Antonio to talk about the formation of an organization that they would call Christians United for Israel. And the reason that they felt prompted to do that was because there was a decline in the support for Israel. Americans were starting to associate Israel with terrorism. If we support Israel, we're going to draw terrorism. So therefore, let's not support Israel and we won't draw terrorism. And so Pastor Hagee decided to call 400 leaders from around the country to San Antonio to talk to them about creating this organization called Christians United for Israel. Now I can tell you, for the 400 of us that were out there, we felt in our hearts that God was moving. The Bible says God loves to do a new thing. It's just that sometimes when God is doing a new thing, you don't recognize it at the moment. You might know it in your heart. You maybe not be bold enough to vocalize it. But we all felt that day that God was doing a new thing. And when Pastor Hagee suggested that we come together to create this organization, and it was unanimous amongst us all, that day, history was made. Now, on that day, it was just 400 leaders. Here we are 10 years later, and it's 2.9 million people. Now, I want to say this again today. You today are here, and you are in the formation of history. It was just 3 years ago that we took African pastors to Israel. And when we came back, we knew it was sparked in all the hearts of them. And you know, the scriptures say, I want to tell you two things the scriptures say. One of them says, is for Zion's sake, I will not hold my peace. Let that be your proclamation. For Zion's sake, I will not hold my peace. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not rest until her righteousness goes forth as brightness and her salvation as a lamp that burns. That's an eternal proclamation that God wants his people always to say in support of Israel. And then to the Christians, there's this statement that James says to us in the Bible. He says, don't be hearers of the word, but be doers. Dr. Tabla, along with all of these people here, represent being a doer. It's in their doing that they have now taken African pastors to Israel 3 times. They have done an African night to Israel 3 times. And now Dr. Tabla is working with Dr. Washington to go around the country and to unite African pastors. And just like when we were in our infancy, we only had 400 of us that turned to 2.9 million people. We know this is the infancy of something that in years, 10 years from now, we'll look back and we'll go, we were the early part of the history of watching God do this new thing. God is doing that today. One of the new things that God is doing is we are becoming people that know we have to be doers. Since the formation in 2006 of Christians United for Israel, we've gone out to Washington, D.C. for the annual summit every year. And every year, God has had us out there just at the time Israel was being attacked in some way. And on that day that we were out there, we got to meet with all of the senators and all of the congressmen and talk about our support for Israel. And within days or weeks, a piece of legislation, sanctions on Iran and things like that, were passed because of our presence out there. It's July 7th, 18th and 19th this year to come out to Washington, D.C. At Living Word, we have one bus that's reserved to take you out there for free. And in the hotel, we've got it down as far as we can go. And if you go out there and you become part of this summit, I guarantee you it will blow your mind. It is so absolutely amazing what we do out there, not only interacting, the event itself at the conference center, hearing the greatest speakers in the world, learning how to advocate for Israel, learning to go on Capitol Hill and meet your senators and congressmen. All the things that happen out there are life-changing and actually help you grow up as a citizen and learn how to advocate for things that are important to you. Change your life. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you again for this night.
We have here with us Mort Naiman from the Minneapolis Jewish Federation. a very good friend, who was here also last year. And we have here also Eli Skora from the St. Paul Jewish Federation.
On behalf of all of us, African Christian United for Israel and Christians United for Israel, on behalf of all of us, with love in our hearts for Israel, we've come today to say to you that we love you so deeply. Israel forms an integral part of our faith and our existence as people of the Most High. And so we hope you use our gift that we're giving you today to do things that will further the existence of this nation that we come to so cherish. We love you, and we love God the Most High. Amen.
I just want to assure you that we love you too. And that these funds for the St. Paul Jewish Federation will be used. We have a partnership region in Israel, up in Tiberias. It's called the Sovev Kinneret. And these funds will be used in that part of Israel to help. And my name is Eli, which is also from the Old Testament.
I'm here to introduce the one who will share our benediction tonight. Please stand with me as we welcome Rabbi Ibrahim Itiki.
So what I would like to tell you, number one, is I would like to teach the community here a word in English, in Yiddish, that says landsman. I don't know how many of you know the word landsman. Landsman happens when someone who came from a certain place and they now move to another place, and then they meet someone who came from their country or city, and after they talk, they say, hey, you're my landsman, meaning we both come from the same place. Well, I'm honored because I can say that to you, that we are landsmen. Because I come from Morocco, from Africa. And so when I heard that this was going to be an evening of, African Americans who are supporters of Israel, I really was so happy to be part of this. So before I conclude with a benediction, I'd like to tell you something. And this really relates a little bit to what Dr. Washington mentioned, okay? Do you know that there was an amazing thing happened 10 days ago? 10 days ago, the United Nations passed a few resolutions. One of them was to recognize Israel for a new treatment for blocked arteries that spares patients from amputations. They also recognize Israel for being the country where the most churches are growing in Israel every week. No other place in that part of the world. Also, they recognize Israel for discovering a special blood test to diagnose Alzheimer's. And another story they told that they recognized Israel for was this 5-year-old Syrian girl who was injured. And as you know, Israel has been welcoming injured Syrians as well as militants, whoever it was, that comes across the border, they take them to the hospitals and take care of them. And so there was this 5-year-old Syrian girl who was injured in the war, and she came to the hospital in Haifa, and they treated her, and then they discovered that she has cancer. And so they said, we can't send you away, you got cancer, you're gonna die. So that she needed bone marrow. And the only place they could get it from was from a relative who was still in Syria. And how do you get someone from Syria into Israel? There's no relationship between the two countries, and there's a war going on there. They sent spies into Syria to bring this relative to Israel so they can provide this 5-year-old with the treatment she needed. Now this happened on April 1st, April Fool's Day. I mean, all these resolutions, they are true, but the United Nations did not say that. The United Nations does not recognize those wonderful things that Israel does. As Professor Washington explained, they are always condemning Israel. So to come to an evening like this and hear from you that you know the truth, that you support Israel, that's really very, very inspiring and really heartwarming to us who are here. So we thank you. Let's give them a hand, really, for what you do. Thank you. Now you can stand for the benediction. Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven, we invoke your blessings upon all gathered here this evening. Bless their worthy endeavors in bringing understanding and respect to all people regardless of race, ethnicity, or religion. Preserve all these leaders and their congregations in health and prosper all the work of their hands. Grant them a long life, a life of peace, goodness, blessing, of reverence of the Almighty. May we remain steadfast in our mission and our commitment to bring peace and tranquility to our communities and to people everywhere. Oseh shalom bimroma, v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May you establish this peace in heaven, bring peace upon all humanity, and let us say, Amen. Thank you very much.